Hey guys, this is Austin, and this is the PS4 Slim. Now this is a fairly new console. In fact, it literally arrived here 23 minutes ago, courtesy of my good buddy Ken. However, I think the big question is this worth it? Slim consoles are nothing new. However, what is a little bit interesting about this is the fact that there is another PS4 coming, the PS4 Pro, in just a couple months. Not only is it a redesigned console, but it's also seen a price cut. So this now runs $300 versus the original PS4, which used to go for $350. On top of that, as you might be able to guess from the wonderful artwork, it now includes Uncharted 4 in the box. I'm really curious to see how this PS4 Slim actually performs, because with that Pro coming out, there's very little reason to get this if you know that there's something better in just a couple months. All right, so if we open up the box, we'll see, first of all, a headset. So it's the same little mono headset that they've been shipping with the PS4 forever. We also have a micro USB cable to charge the controller. You also get an HDMI cable in the box. Now, something interesting about the PS4 Slim is that, unlike the Xbox One S, it does not support 4K, but there is an update to support HDR. However, that HDR update will now work on all PS4s. Super confusing, I know. There's also the power cable. So just like the Xbox One S and the original PS4, there's no power brick. Now this time around, the controller's actually been slightly redesigned, so I'm curious to see. If I could open it from the right side, it would be helpful. This actually feels like, wait. No, this is the same thing. So this is an original PS4 controller, and this is the Slim. I'm not seeing a lot of difference at first glance. Oh, there is a little bit of light up there. Oh. We also have a full disc copy of Uncharted 4. This is actually a nice touch. I feel like most of the time you just get a digital download. I think that's everything for the unboxing. Let's actually get the console itself. And I can already see it's tiny. Wow. Whoa, that is a lot smaller. Now I was surprised when I saw the original Xbox One versus the S at how much smaller it was. But this is even bigger of a leap. Ooh. First of all, no more glossy plastic. That is a lot better looking in person than any of the pictures or videos that I've seen. When I first saw the leaks and some of the early hands-on pictures, I was like, but it's not bad. So it's kind of like someone took an original PS4 and chopped off the top half. But the big difference is in the height. So the Slim is, well, slim. Unlike the original PS4, which had these annoying touch buttons for power and eject, the PS4 Slim has dedicated physical buttons. Not only are they much nicer to hit, but they're also different sizes, so you know which one's which. You know what, this is a nice little touch. So Sony has all the feet are these square, I completely pointed at triangle when I said square. Around back, we have the port for the power, we have PlayStation camera, HDMI, and Ethernet. There's no optical audio, but honestly, I don't think that's a huge loss. And unlike the Xbox One S, which dropped the Connect port, you're pretty much getting the full experience here. There's also what looks like a port here. I wonder, oh, hello. Ah, this is how you get to the hard drive. One fancy PS4 screw later, we should be able to get at the hard drive. So this should be a normal 500 gigabyte hard drive. I've got to give Sony props. They have made it even easier to get at the hard drive on the PS4 Slim. Still 5400 RPM. So this should be pretty much identical to what you would find in the original PS4. However, all you do is find basically any sort of SSD or small 2.5-inch hard drive. It should fit in this caddy, and you can drop it right back into the PS4. Especially considering this is only $300, it actually might not be crazy to consider just upgrading the hard drive when you first get it. 500 gigabytes is decent. You'll be able to store a few games, but stuff like Uncharted is like 50 gigabytes. It does not take long before you'll fill that up. Hardware-wise, the PS4 Slim is pretty much what you would expect out of a Slim console. However, what I'm curious about is how does it actually perform? Get into a game, and it's essentially identical to the original PS4, which shouldn't be a surprise. In theory, it can support HDR for apps and games. However, there's nothing out yet, and I imagine most games will focus on the PS4 Pro on the HDR side. Where you will notice a difference is in sound. The older PS4 was always noisier than I'd like, and a lot of it was thanks to the Blu-ray drive. The new Slim drive is a bit quieter, but not by much. Switch to a digital title like Rocket League, and the Slim is still a fair bit quieter. The only issue is when you put a disc in the Slim. Yeah. Hand in hand with noise is power consumption. Both the Xbox One S and PS4 Slim are based on an updated hardware architecture, which enables the same performance in a smaller package, and the Slim definitely takes advantage. In idle, it's a noticeable difference, but while playing Uncharted 4, the original model needs nearly twice the power. It also runs a bit cooler. The original only really got warm when it didn't have access to clean air, but the Slim runs a few degrees cooler across the board. A less obvious but seriously needed upgrade is in the Wi-Fi department. The original PS4 had only 2.4 GHz Wi-Fi, which not only is fairly slow, but incredibly prone to even worse slowdowns in areas like apartments where there's a lot of interference. The Slim thankfully has at least upgraded to 5 GHz wireless, which delivers up to triple the speed on my connection. It's not perfect, but a huge improvement. So, is the PS4 Slim worth it? Well, it depends. If you currently own a PlayStation 4, this is not a great upgrade. Sure, it's better, however with the PS4 Pro on the horizon, it just doesn't make sense. However, if you haven't jumped on the PS4 bandwagon yet, it gets a little bit more complicated. Now if you don't have a 4K TV, the PS4 Slim is totally fine. However, the PS4 Pro will still have some upgrades in performance even on a normal TV, and you're also getting a 1TB hard drive. So is that worth the extra $100? For most people, probably. However, the Slim is still a solid console. As always, if you guys want to check this out, I will have a link in the description, and you can also check out one of my recent videos where I took a look at the forgotten Nintendo console, this crazy contraption called the Panasonic Cube. Hey guys, it's Austin. Today I'm here with a video talking about blah 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 blah.